Your Highness, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President and Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates, ruler of Dubai, welcome. Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, a very warm welcome to you all to the first World Free Zone Organization Conference and Exhibition. And a very special congratulations to Dubai for being chosen as the headquarters for the organization. Congratulations. Now, I don't know if many of you know that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum actually issued a law just a few days ago. It's law number 13 of this year, and it's to establish a council that looks into free zones. So this is part of the ongoing support, and in fact part of the reason that we are sitting here in this room today. Now, to find out perhaps a bit more about that, but especially about what the World Free Zone Organization has in store over the next year, please welcome to the stage the organization's chairman, Dr. Mohammed Azharani.
Your Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President, Prime Minister of the UAE, and ruler of Dubai. Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the first Free Zones Outlook International Conference. Your Highness, just 12 short months ago, you witnessed the inauguration of the World Free Zone Organization as a new and dedicated platform for international trade and foreign direct investment. Today, 1 year on, we are again honored by your presence and support at our first annual international conference and exhibition. We have been busy. Some great strides have been taken since May last year. We elected our esteemed board of directors. We developed and launched a range of services to members, including strategic research and insight led by our observatory team. We are in the midst of our inaugural annual exhibition and conference, Free Zones Outlook International and General Assembly. We have representatives on the ground in the Middle East, Africa, China, US, Europe, Latin America, and India. And today, 155 organizations from 42 countries have chosen the World Free Zone Organization as their strategic partner. Put simply, we have created a place where people come together and share knowledge to the benefit of all. Your Highness Sheikh Mohammed put it best when you spoke of a choice: innovate or stagnate. Innovation is the engine of all transformation in today's global economy. It is no coincidence that governments, businesses, and organizations who acknowledge this fact tend to operate at the leading edge of global trade. Of course, innovation rarely happens in isolation. It follows from knowledge, collaboration, and awareness of the emerging needs and opportunities presented by the global economy. Trade patterns are not static. Rather, they are in a state of permanent evolution, driven by the imperatives of the changing world. Every generation remarks the world in accordance with its own priorities. Our parents did it. We are doing it, and in time that responsibility will pass to our children's generation. So, what are the primary themes we are seeing today. Undoubtedly, there has been a move away from the notion of made in to one of created in, as governments and businesses focus more on knowledge hubs. Of course, knowledge-inspired innovation demands flexible trade conditions to prosper. Increasingly, governments have looked to bilateral and regional free trade agreements in an effort to provide more flexible trading rules, though this trend has actually hindered global trade, international investment, and sustainable economic prosperity. Today, there exists a convoluted web of international agreements that are short on scope and lacking in internationally accepted standards. Free zones offer an elegant solution to this flexibility, and within the new global trade order, they are prospering. They prosper because they offer the best international platforms to assist global manufacturing through long-term job creation, diversification of industries, nurtured innovation, investment, and international trade momentum. They prosper because they offer innovative and collaborative solutions to the challenges of 21st century trade. What's next is ensuring the support from strategic stakeholders, multilateral organizations, and governments to truly understand the sustained prosperity free zones have to offer. This conference is a window to the world, and it is inspiring to see so many of you here and taking part. Our 6 panel sessions and 6 workshops have seen our board directors share their personal experiences of building and maintaining highly successful free zone operations. We have over 40 world-class speakers debating a number of critical topics. Our keynote speakers will bring further expert insight on the changing global trade order. The World Free Zone Organization is about coming together to share knowledge, experience, and expertise. We are setting the standard for future Free Zone Outlook International Conference, and we are creating positive, powerful messages that we can articulate to global stakeholders via a unified voice. We have an amazing story to tell. I take this opportunity to thank all our sponsors who supported us in this conference. I am also thankful to all of you for attending the World Free Zones Organization first event. I wish all the participants an enjoyable and beneficial time.
Dr. Zaraoni, thank you very much indeed for your words. And we'd like to now hear from the Minister of Economy for United Arab Emirates, His Excellency Sultan bin Saeed Al Mansouri.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Your Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE and ruler of Dubai, Your Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Crown Prince of Dubai, Your Highnesses, Excellencies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm actually very honored to be here with you this afternoon and to join you today in the opening of the World Free Zone Organization. This is actually the first Outlook International Conference that has been held here in Dubai and in the UAE. But Your Highness, let me tell a story, funny story I had when I was a teenager. This is in the early 70s. With a couple of my friends, we were teenagers, no driving license. We took a car, we used to live in Jumeirah, and we drove into the desert, and we got stuck in this place. And of course, it was very difficult to get because nobody was around. And luckily, there was some trucks way far, far away, so we walked up there. and they came and they saved us. These trucks were working on the Dubai free zone, that area, which today became one of the largest and most successful free zones in the world. It really tells you the story of success that this place had, Dubai and the UAE, and the changes that has happened, and the effect of free zones in the economies of countries such as the UAE. Of course, there has been a lot of significant efforts in how we have developed this, whether in terms of the importance of these kind of free zones for the economy of the UAE, but also how we have set up standards for the rest of the world. And this is something that we always hear when I take delegations all over the world. One of the expertise that we have gained over the years here in the UAE is in the area of free zones, and how this has actually been a successful model for all of us. And this is where the success of an organization such as the World Free Zone Organization comes in line with the UAE continuous growth. The UAE has continued to witness tremendous growth in the economy. And this has set up an example also for the rest of the region, that stability within the region can only be achieved through stability with the economy. And the model of the UAE, and in Dubai in particular, has become also an example to learn from. And this is something that we would like to export and to also jointly develop together to be able to achieve these kind of visions and this leadership that we have in this country. But also the Ministry of Economy has took a very important role in the diversification of the economy of the UAE. Some of the examples: in 1971, 90% of the UAE GDP was reliance on oil. Today, it's less than 30%. The widespread of the diversification of the economy has come under the direction and the guidelines of the leadership of the UAE, that oil will not last forever. To do that, we need to focus on education, on people, and providing for other options and alternatives to make sure that we manage this economy and also set as an example for the rest of the region as we go on, and specifically when it comes to the Gulf region. UAE success stories in the economy, in the management of the government. One of it is that the UAE has ranked first in the world for public trust in government, business, and innovation, and this is according to the Edelman Trust Barometer for 2015, and also some of the really excellent results that we have achieved through the World Economic Forum Global Competitiveness Report for the 2014-2015. We actually skyrocketed by 7 places to rank almost 12 globally in terms of the competitiveness. We also have been ranked as the first in the Arab world and the second in the sub-indicator for the absence of trade obstacles in the same report. When it comes to the FDI, the foreign direct investments, the flow has surged tremendously also. In the last 6 years, we had actually an increase from almost $4 billion in 2009. The figures I just received actually today for the 2014, it actually reached, this is for 2015 alone, $11.85 billion. Now, there has been, of course, a considerable efforts to develop the economy and to, as I said, both in terms of the foreign trade and investment and also the industry sector, which is very important for us. Of course, all this has strengthened our position globally here through the increasing of competitiveness within the economy of the UAE. But I would like to focus a little bit on the free zones, because the free zones have played also, as I mentioned, a very important role on trade and diversification. The value of free zone trades in 2013 amounted to almost 33% of the total non-oil trade of our country. Now, during the 2013, the free zone trade grew by almost 16% compared to the previous year. Of course, very important part of this whole thing, and this is something we need to also focus on, it doesn't only, free zones are not only for trade, they actually help to stimulate, beside trade, investments, but also actually it's a gateway to transfer of skills, knowledge, and technology. And that's something we have experienced here in the UAE. But also the UAE now this year boasts almost 36 free zones with specialized sectors. And again, this is an area that we have developed quite tremendously, where we have not only trade, but also clean energy, industry, ICT, media, finance, gold and metals, and healthcare. This is where we offer also 100% ownership and also tax-free environment or tax exemption for long periods. And of course, very important to be attached to this is the world-class logistic, compatible, and many other also attractive facilities that are an important investment from the governments that have to be focusing on. So it is undoubtedly that from our side, we look at free zone as I said, a very important partner in the development of the future economy of our country. But also, there are many potential scope of expansion when it comes to partnership between us, the expertise that we have built, and many other free zones that are being developed at the present time. And I would call on those of you who are here for the first time to bridge your contacts with our free zone organization that we have here in the UAE, and to make sure that you are able to build up the momentum and the capability, and to be able also to achieve as much as possible from your visit here. But let me also assure you one thing, and that is the Ministry of Economy, and through the team of the Ministry of Economy, we are actually working hand in hand, both with the national and international organization, to make sure that we'll be able to succeed at this objective at the end of the day. I want to thank you very much, Your Highness, for being here and for supporting us, and I wish you well in this. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for that. And in fact, you're saying that it's not just about monetary benefit, it's about really the exchange of things, whether it's goods or ideas. And that mirrors perfectly what we were hearing this morning from Professor Xavier, who's really saying that we started off with exchanging goods with each other. That's how it started with local trade that became global trade. But the big deal these days is the exchange of thoughts and ideas. That is where it's at. Well, I'm now pleased to welcome to the stage the Director of Compliance and Facilitation at the World Customs Organization, Kaozang Zhu.
His Highness, His Excellency, so colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. So it's a great pleasure for me to address such a distinguished audience, and I would like to thank the World Free Zones Organization for inviting me to this important and it's the first annual international conference and exhibition. So the topic of this event, towards a new global trade order, speaks for itself. So we are the lucky witnesses of the international changes in the global trading system that have been preoccupying the minds of economists and politicians for years. So as observed by scholars, the underlying relationship between trade actors and states, which largely dominated the international trade order, started shifting. So we lived in a very vibrant and a confrontational environment. So borders emerge and disappear. So new parallel trading platforms such as cyberspace develop so fast that regulators do not manage to keep the pace. So trade has changed as well. Growing volumes, higher velocities, new modes of transport, new routes, new technologies, virtual currencies, and particularly e-commerce, all these variables define the new phase of the global trade. So from the customs perspective, all these developments are both good and bad news. So they are good news because we have seen the trade barriers lowered. Markets opened, local or regional supply chains turned global. So we started talking about the integration in the global value chains as a mechanism of getting countries out of poverty. So there is bad news. Criminals profit from globalization as well. So transnational crimes used to be described as a rare phenomenon some time ago turned in a term which was swiftly found its place, not only in the international legal instruments, such as the United Nations Convention Against the Transnational Organized Crime, but also in our daily vocabularies. So this globalization antagonism is deeply rooted in a new global order. So globalization is a dream of generations, and trade has always been one of the manifestations of freedom and power. So idea of the free port can be traced to 160 years BC, when the Roman Senate took a decision to make then Roman island Delos a free port. So city-states in the early Middle Ages, such as Venice, operated in a way we now define as free ports or free zones. The cities of Hamburg and Bremen being the key players in the Hanseatic League in the North and the Baltic Seas in the 13th century were another manifestation of this phenomenon. So, however, it is commonly recognized, agreed, the oldest free trade zones in modern sense dates back to Shannon Island, where the first FTZ was established in 1959. So today, according to the International Labour Organization, there are more than 4,000 active free zones in one form or another in around 140 countries. So thus, it has become a global phenomenon within a time span of over 50 years. So talking about a global phenomenon, it would be interesting to see how free trade zones will be developing in the future, whether they keep being an exception from the current trading environment in legal, political, and procedural sense, or maybe they represent the future of trade where borders give their place to these entities. Okay, time will show. So throughout the last 50 years, free trade zones have served at the forefront of government policies to drive economic growth through the stimulation of investments and the creation of working places. However, its dark side is that if not managed properly, these free trade zones may turn into safe havens for money laundering, counterfeiting, and piracy of products, racketeering, trafficking in narcotics, weapons, wildlife, hazardous products, and fraud. So free trade zones are an important and integral part of the global supply and value chains. So reputation of industries and countries depends on the way the free trade zones are managed. So in the times of increasing transparency and the civil responsibilities, we have to ensure that the operational environment of the free trade zone is safe and secure, procedures transparent, operators are law-abiding, and commodities going through these zones further in the supply chains are legal. So the World Customs Organization, with its 179 members, is the global voice of customs community, together processing more than 98% of global trade. We are the only intergovernmental organization that has the mandate to set the standards in the customs area. So since its inception 62 years ago, it has developed numerous binding and non-binding instruments and tools to assist its members in their daily work. So it involves together with customs profession. So from our perspective, the free trade zones are not a part of customs territory only in terms of duties and taxes. So customs have to have an oversight over the flows of goods through the free trade zones. The coordination and communication mechanism between customs and free zone operators have to be robust and well established. So it is therefore a common duty of the governments to ensure that free zone operators and the private sector provide the highest level of compliance, excellency, transparency, efficiency, and safety for the healthy development of free trade zones. So I sincerely wish the conference a big success. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed for that. And in fact, the issues you touch upon will be dissected and discussed over the course of today and tomorrow. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Your Highness, thank you very much for joining us today. And now to continue with this session's proceedings, I welcome to the stage the Chief Economist and Director of Economic Research and Statistics, I could never say that properly, at the World Trade Organization, Robert Koopman.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests. My thanks to the organizers of this conference for inviting me here today to share an update on the global trade agenda from the WTO perspective. As many of you know, since the financial crisis, world merchandise trade has been expanded very weakly compared to the growth observed in the 1990s and early 2000s. We expect continued slow improvement in trade growth for the next 2 years, roughly keeping pace with income growth. And I wonder if many of your members here today feel this slower growth of recent years. While trade and economic growth currently remains fragile around the world, there are steps that can be taken to change this dynamic. Trade can be a powerful policy tool to leverage economic growth and development, as some of you may have observed from this morning's presentations. It's also important to keep in mind that during the recent financial crisis, the policy framework built by the GATT and WTO worked to ensure that trade war did not break out. The success of the multilateral trade system during times of historic economic stress served the increasingly globalized economy well. The vision of the WTO's founders of cooperation on trade that is truly global is being realized. Together, WTO members now account for approximately 98% of world trade. Today, when the global economy is more interconnected than ever, it is difficult to imagine a world without the World Trade Organization. By setting global trade rules, monitoring adherence to those rules, and helping to resolve disputes between nations when they arise, the WTO plays a crucial role in global governance. Currently, at the WTO, there are a number of active negotiations being undertaken, as well as regular ongoing work continuing at a very high level. The WTO's successful Bali package on trade facilitation, which some estimate could add 1 trillion or more to global trade, mainly in developing countries, and likely something very important to free zones, is being implemented now, lowering trade costs through improved efficiency and effectiveness, reducing costs at borders. These are very important steps. It is important to recognize the role that free zones can play here, and equally important to study what elements work, which elements don't work, depending on the circumstances and goals of the various zones. But more can be done to develop an even more trade-friendly global environment. At the WTO, members are very actively working to develop a work program by July of this year, which will set us on course to conclude the remaining issues of the Doha Development Agenda. This has been a long time in process, but members seem to be moving to a solution-finding mode. We don't think, nor did we ever expect, that solution-finding mode would be easy. It's proving tough, but negotiations always are. Whatever the nature of the work program members get by July, it must be a successful springboard towards a successful 10th Ministerial Conference in Nairobi in December. In addition to the Doha round, groups of members are also working to expand the WTO's Information Technology Agreement and to liberalize trade in environmental goods. In June, the Global Review of Aid for Trade will provide an important additional focus to the development component of our work. In addition, the WTO is closely engaged with broader efforts such as the UN's work on financing for development that has an upcoming meeting in July in Addis Ababa, and ongoing discussions on the post-2015 development agenda. For some of you who saw the presentations this morning, you'll see that there's been very fast economic convergence over the last 20 years. And it's important to keep in mind that the previous Millennium Development Goals for poverty reduction were largely met with trade providing a significant contribution to economic growth. The day-to-day work of the WTO continues. Dispute settlement work remains very busy. Accessions continue apace as we welcome Seychelles as our 161st member last week. And regular monitoring and reporting on global and country-level trade policy developments continue to serve an important role for transparency, honest exchange, and policy intelligence for member countries. Now let me close by providing some important historical perspective. The world has experienced several major waves of economic development since the Industrial Revolution of the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Each wave has been accompanied by an equally major expansion of international trade and marked by faster catch-up growth than the previous wave. The current and most extensive wave started after the 1980s and has seen some countries, including China and India, opening up and embarking on the most rapid process of industrial catch-up experience to date. As global economic development has widened, deepened, and accelerated, the international economic system has had to adapt. In the mid-19th century, economic relations were governed by a Europe-centric network of bilateral trade agreements. After 1945, economic relations were governed for the first time by a multilateral system of rules, including the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, now the World Trade Organization, and by its sister Bretton Woods institutions, the World Bank and the IMF. Incomes in developing countries have been converging with those of rich countries since the 1990s because growth has accelerated in developing economies, while in developed economies it has slowed down. The performance of developing country G20 members has been particularly strong. Successive rounds of tariff reductions, and here, this is important, well-designed and clearer international rules, their transparent application has facilitated and reinforced, augmenting the many domestic policy reforms that help bring the world closer together. Through increased globalization and faster economic convergence. But there's still more that can be done. Continued reductions in trade barriers and trade costs can help the global recovery and help realize broad-based economic growth. Free zones, by design, also aim to reduce costs, to encourage economic synergies, and can also make substantial contributions to economic growth and development. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, I wish you a great success in the conference and in your business pursuits. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for that. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break for lunch. Please, could we be back in the room by 3 o'clock? Enjoy.